I'm really starting to regret doing these back to back, but hey, man, if I don't do it now, then when? So it's advertisements that these I like to try and avoid because they're so bright and flashy and they kind of like distracting. So I want to try and pick. I guess it's better. It's gold. It's bright. Let's try one more time. Hopefully it's better. Yeah, well, we're stuck with this one then. It's better, I think, in my opinion. So this is chapter 33, character development and family relationships. 第33章可怜天下父母. Yeah. That translates to um some poor really? Google Translate gives me poor parents. I just feel like it's more like unfortunate parents or unfortunate parents under heaven or something. That would uh, uh the sad parents under the sky or something. Some type of literal translation like that. So last chapter 32, we see a lot of Sumei's character interaction, some relationship there, and then the last thing he said was, "I want to sell the house," and then that's where chapter 33 starts. Lu mother slapped Lu Yuan across the face. Lu Yuan was able to dodge, but he did not. Yeah, so I see there's some comments that say this is what is this novel? This was tagged under science. Why are you talking all this family drama, this romance drama? Yes, I know. I will apologize for the author in advance, but might I don't want to get your expectations too high, but I personally think it's worth it. It's especially if you came for science fiction. So there's a hot pain on his face. The teenager looked at his mother's angry and tired expression, and his heart was extremely painful, but he patiently explained to his mother why he needed to sell the house. He said that he wanted to pay off the debt for his father, and that he'd given the $100,000 scholarship to the person who came to collect the debt that night. He also talked about the games he's been playing in the past few days, and also talked about the 200,000 yen that Zhao Junli has given. Then we continue ask Zhao Junli to ask, Lu Mu said softly. The house is sold. Where do we live? We can rent the house first, Lu Yuan said earnestly. Anyway, there's nothing valuable at home. If we can move, we will move. And if we can't, we'll stay here. As for Zhao Junli, I can't ask for it anymore. I don't know the details, but if I ask for it, something will happen. And these sections are just amazingly written portions. They're amazing relationships. And to be honest, I feel like this is so entirely realistic that it's depressingly. If it's in a novel, it's so endearing, but because it's so realistic, it's also so tragic. But it's these cultural values that I feel give Chinese novels and culture just this different, distinct flavor from Western novels. But to each their own style, and both have their benefits and downsides. But just this is why I think why Chinese can write certain dramas and certain ones, and it doesn't necessarily translate to the West, but I think everyone can relate to this to a certain extent. And then the Koreans and Japanese have their own style as well. Lu's mother looked at her son, who was already taller than herself, and listened to what he said to herself, neither humble nor overbearing. For the first time, she really felt that the child had grown up. From that night, when she took away the 100,000 yuan that was prepared to give him tuition, Lu Yuan's mother felt that the son has grown up. And now, looking at the son who has raised more than 300,000 yuan in her hands, Lu Mu's feeling is stronger. Your dad, Mother Lu hesitated and said these two words. Since the day my father ran away with all the cash in the family and left his relatives and friends with a pile of foreign debts, these two words have become a taboo in the family. Your dad told me at the beginning. He said that he believes him this time, and he will definitely make a difference. Not only can we make a profit, but we can also live a good life. He lets me seize his deposit when it was at most several million. You gamble, sometimes you go up, sometimes you go down. But it's blink, it's all gone. Lu Mu said with a look of memories. I can't keep up with the times, and I don't know how the game is done. But in my opinion, it's no different from gambling. I'll get to the comments in a little bit. If you're gambling, your dad moves his fingers, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even million, and it disappears in the blink of an eye. You can't even hear a sound. This is a bit of trouble for you. I think you kept yourself in the house for so long. You clearly did so well in the exams, but you did not go out to relax. You struggled there day and night. I was always worried. I was also worried, but I also felt that you were big. Now that I have my own opinion, but these hundreds of thousands, nearly a million, have been invested. What if you can't hear it? I'm gonna say save the next section. I'll read some of the comments. So you have a lot of these internet commenters. I bet you these science fiction readers. 567课, Avatar, star funding. So yeah, various commenters, interesting stuff. She then says, "Our family can't afford to toss again." Lu Yuan did not know how to convince his mother. After all, if you start a business to the point of selling a house, it is really embarrassing to throw it at your grandfather's house. Lu Yuan nodded numbly and turned around to leave his mother's room. When I walked to the door, I heard my mother say to stop. He turned his head and looked at Lu's mother, and saw that the mother, who was only in her early 40s, had become a little white in her sideburns because of the changes in the past year, and her eyes were a little sour. "Are you confident?" Lu asked. Lu Yuan nodded silently. Oh, I remember the quote I was mentioning in my analysis. Mother Lu gave a hum, turned her head, and opened her bedboard, fumbled for a long time in a small compartment inside, then took out a small cloth bag and handed it over. The day your dad left, I rummaged through the cabinet to find this. I finally, after a fight with him, he didn't take it away. Obviously, there's a little bit of cultural values, but author's written whether for his own personal opinion or sake. It's good story. Women, there are only two men, a husband and a son, who can be trusted in a lifetime. Your mother has a bad life, and my husband is unreliable. I can only rely on my son. Lu Yuan called Mom and cried. Lu Mu smiled and said, "What's the crying about this?" Lu Yuan wiped Lu Yuan's face with her hand. Lu Yuan was so high that Lu Yuan's mother could only touch his face by raising her hand. Men shouldn't cry when they grow up. Children cry. She stuffed the cloth bag in Lu Yuan's hands. "Let's go. I've always believed in the wrong person in my life, but my child can't let me believe in the wrong." Lu Yuan never wanted to break through his moral bottom line in such a moment, using the transportation committee to make a large sum of money, which was enough for his family to spend for 10 lifetimes. What game? What world to save? Anyway, the world will be destroyed in 5 years. If Lu Yuan is ready, he can take all the people he cares about in the icy and snowy end times for a long, long time. After all, only he in this world knows how to face the world where the sun goes out. Mom, Lu Yuan looked at his mother's face. "Do you want your child to be upright forever?" Mother Lu smiled. "Child, always upright." Lu Yuan, with a plop, Lu Yuan knelt on the ground and knocked his head heavily. Lu's mother panicked. She did not know why the sentence caused such a big reaction to her son, so she hurriedly stepped forward to help Lu Yuan, but was hugged tightly by Lu Yuan, who was kneeling on the ground. "Mom," Lu Yuan said while biting his lips, tears crisscrossing his face, "I swear I will definitely make our family better." After the emotion is released to the extreme, it is exhaustion. Finally, Lu Yuan took the book to leave his mother's room, went back to his house to change clothes and shoes and planned to go out again, and sent the book to the real estate agent for procedures. Although the house of Lu Yuan's house is not big, it has a good location. If you don't rush to sell it slowly, it can sell for 800 or 900,000. But if you're in a hurry to sell, especially Lu Yuan, who's very anxious, it will be just over 700,000 cash. Lu Yuan never felt the weight of this piece of paper in his hand before he was in the house. He already hinted to his mother that if her mother thought that she could not make money so hard, then as long as Lu Yuan was given 3 days, he would be fine. He can use the transportation committee to paralyze the world's network, and by the way, withdraw countless wealth from the bank. Even if there's a day when the Dongchuan incident happens, the Earth can't wait that long. Lu Yuan can stay away from the law for at least 5 years. After 5 years, there will be no laws on this planet. But the mother believed that her son was born upright. Lu Yuan liked this very much. He still carried his school bag, but the book was placed next to his body, in his pocket, came to the door and opened the door. A haggard old man was walking upstairs, and he was stunned when he saw Lu Yuan opening the door. Lu Yuan was also stunned. He looked at each other, at each other. His thin cheeks, dry, sagging skin, some shaved foreheads, and a chin with green stubble. Frozen for a long time, called dead. Lu Dongming turned around and ran downstairs. Lu Yuan rushed forward and hugged his father. A sour smell that hadn't been washed all the time came on his face, but Lu Yuan hugged his father tighter. If it wasn't for this debts, Lu Yuan would definitely not make things so uncomfortable. But looking at this father who came to the door of his house, Lu Yuan suddenly felt what he did was at least worth it, because Dad is still back. Dad, probably Ba or Dia. Lu Yuan hugged Lu Dongming's waist tightly and bound his hands, because the other party was struggling desperately to escape. Welcome back. Lu Yuan shook his whole body, knelt down, and started crying. Now, if you're a science fiction reader, I know this may not be the scene that you want to read. You're thinking, why is there this romance scene in a science fiction novel? Yeah, it's pretty well written, but I came here to read science fiction. Something like, I don't know, The Legendary Mechanic, Superstars of Tomorrow. This is more of an urban novel than a science fiction novel. Trust me, the game is a science fiction novel, so I'll give you that warning. And then I'll do some analysis, because that's originally the reason why I wanted to read some of this. Yeah, so a couple things come to mind, one by one. There's an amazing manga called Fushigi no Ani Shonen. Obviously, Shonen is aimed toward the younger people, and then Fushigi is the thing. It's a bunch of collections of short stories. I think it's called the Bakshi Family, which is, I think, Volume 2, Chapter 17, where you get a very similar plot point, where it talks about coincidences in life. Very, very beautiful chapter. I got a very similar vibe from this. Number two, I'm reminded of, I think it's not The Human Emperor, but it was, not Magical Industrial Empire. It's one of those fantasy industrialization novels. Oh, Sword of Daybreak, or This Ancestor. Probably Sword of Daybreak, where it talks about this family. I'm pretty sure it's Sword of Daybreak, where this family, sometimes for a family, the most scary thing is not a prodigal waste, like just a rich third generation, that young master, um, uh, third young master, no, the third son, the third generation that wastes money. Because even if he wastes money, he can't. It's very difficult for him to spend the family fortune if the family fortune is constantly being accumulated, right? It's pretty easy to offend people, right? And there's certain people you can, you should, and shouldn't offend, right? If you don't have a sense of proportion. But it's very difficult for one person to consume a whole family. You can definitely weaken a family, but it's not easy to consume a whole family. But an ambitious person can definitely put a family in debt, right? Because if there is an ambitious person, he is willing to throw a lot of dice. And if the whole family backs him up and they back him up wrong, you can damage the thing. So, there's both reasons, right? Some people blame the prodigal generation, but at the same time, that prodigal generation, it's very rarely difficult for them to completely consume the family. At most, they'll lose some face and a lot of money in the process, right? Unless he crosses the protagonist, or someone he shouldn't have crossed, like, the government or something. But an ambitious person, he can offend a lot more people, especially MCs as well, right? They offend so many people, and they can bring great wealth to their family, but they can also bring great great risk as well, right? So, the winner is a hero and the loser is a villain type thing. Whereas a prodigal may be a villain, but it's not. It's pretty easy to change your reputation if you do good things to make up for it, right? It's easier for a hero to become a villain than it is for. It's easier for um. It's pretty easy to turn a hero into a villain, just as it is to turn a villain into at least a semi decent person. But yeah, so definitely a lot of family relationships, a lot of drama, which, as a science fiction reader, when I came trying to read this book, I was not interested in the drama. I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, I was touched, no kidding, but I was like, where's my science fiction? Don't worry, it's coming. I always hesitate to say stuff like this, because I feel like I'm overpromising you, and I really don't want to be lying to you, but I genuinely feel that there is some very good science fiction in the future. Yes, yeah, 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 yeah. I think volume two. Yeah, there's definitely science fiction in the later volumes, but the early volumes, it's hard to say. Yeah, I wouldn't blame anyone if they didn't want to continue reading for the science fiction. But I guarantee you a lot of drama people are going to be confused when they hit some of the later volumes. So yeah, I guess maybe this I kind of knew this wasn't going to be a mainstream novel, but it was almost too good to let go. So yeah, that's chapter 33, and if I'm not mistaken, the next chapter I'll be covering is chapter 36. And I'm surprised this is still within my benchmark limit of 17 minutes. My test analysis would always go for like 20, 30, maybe 12 alone. Okay, I'm thinking. Shoot. Okay, I'm definitely doing chapter 36. Chapter 37, I think, is where you get like some of the first touches of science fiction. Uh, Chapter 35's equity distribution, his father returns and whatnot, and you get some family building. I'll quickly reread 32 through 35, and then I'll make the decision to go to 36. But yeah, thanks for listening in.